majonjo, alicheza kwa madoi, kwa majonjo. Yamoto Band live Disemba 10.
Before Mbosso became the superstar we know today, before he was signed by Diamond Platnumz, WCB Wasafi, before songs like Hodari, Nadekeza, and his emotional love songs made him one of Tanzania's biggest artists, there was a young Mbosso known as Maromboso, and he was not alone. He was part of 4 young musicians who for a brief moment looked almost unstoppable: Aslay, Mbosso, Enock, and Beka Flavour. Together they became Yamoto Band. And this is where the story gets interesting, because Yamoto was not just another music group. They were one of the most exciting acts in Tanzania Bongo Flava scene. They had the songs, they had the talent, they had the fame, they had the money. They even had the kind of brotherhood that made fans believe they would be together for years.
Nilikuwazia sana, nikatoa nikagawanya, nikajua unadanganya, we mbaya we.
But then, the same success that brought them together would eventually pull them apart. So how did the 4 young men go from being one of Tanzania's biggest musical groups to working for completely different paths? This is the rise and fall of Yamoto Band. To understand Yamoto, you have to understand where this young artist came from. The group was associated with the Mkubwa na Wanawe management camp led by Said Fella, popularly known as Mkubwa Fella. The 4 members were Aslay, Mbosso, Enock, and Beka Flavour. But Aslay already had an advantage. He had started attracting attention while still very young, and his early success helped establish him as one of the recognizable faces among the group.
Daddy, kwani Shabani mwanao alaliaga kifua cha mama, kwani na yule mwanao.
Then came Mbosso, Bwana Yusuf Kilungi. He would later become one of the most successful members of the group. But at this stage, he was simply another young artist trying to survive in the Tanzania's brutally competitive music industry. And then there was Enock, whose powerful voice became one of Yamoto's trademarks.
Unapita na dumu la petroli, hebu niache.
Beka Flavour brought his own style and personality. 4 different artists, 4 different voices, one group, Yamoto. According to Mwanaspoti, the group's name was connected to their early song, Yamoto, which was recorded using new music equipment at Mkubwa na Wanawe. The song's success helped give the group its name. And then everything changed. Yamoto Band began making serious noise around 2013. But the real explosion came when the group started releasing songs that resonated with the ordinary Tanzanian listeners. One of their major breakthrough songs was Nitakupole Pwecha. The song became so popular that the Citizen later described it as one of the biggest songs released by a Tanzanian band, noting that it had accumulated millions of YouTube views. Suddenly, these were no longer 4 young men trying to break into the industry. They were stars. They came more hits, Mahaba Niue, Cheza kwa Madoido, and other songs that pushed the group beyond Tanzania and into wider East African entertainment scene. Their popularity grew, their performance increased, their name became bigger, and the 4 young men who had once been chasing opportunities were now being chased by the industry. In 2015, Yamoto Band's rise was recognized when they won the Best Band award at the Kilimanjaro Music Awards. That tells you just how high they had climbed. But success has a strange habit. It doesn't only reward talent. Sometimes it reveals ambitions. Imagine being part of a group with 4 talented artists. You perform together, you record together, you travel together, you make money together. But then you begin to wonder, what if I can become bigger on my own? That question will become one of the biggest problems Yamoto Band faced. By 2016 and 2017, the group was no longer producing music with the same consistency. There were reports of disagreements between the artists and their management. In January 2017, Enock publicly acknowledged that there had been disagreement with management and that the problem had contributed to the group going for a period without releasing new music. At the time, however, he insisted the problem had been resolved. But behind the scenes, something bigger was happening. The members were beginning to see their individual futures. And then came Wasafi. Now, this is where Mbosso's story became particularly interesting. Around this period, Tanzania's music industry was being transformed by Diamond Platnumz and WCB Wasafi. And one artist who became a major part of that story was Rayvanny. According to Aslay later account, Yamoto's members saw Rayvanny's rapid rise after joining Wasafi and began thinking seriously about what they could achieve individually. Aslay later argued that Yamoto was already struggling, but Rayvanny's success at Wasafi helped push the members further towards solo careers.
Ni katika mafanikio yetu, kila mtu tena mafanikio yalikuwa makubwa sana, alikuwa anatamani kujiona yeye kama yeye sasa ni amefikia sehemu gani. Maana sasa tulikuwa tushafika hatua ya kusemani. Tulikuwa tunaiona hela, tulikuwa tunajua hapa kuna nzuri, kuna baya mafanikio.
Think about that. Yamoto had been successful as 4, but suddenly the biggest question became, what can I achieve as 1? And that question is dangerous for any group, because when every member starts dreaming about a solo throne, eventually somebody has to leave the kingdom. By 2017, Yamoto Band was effectively coming to an end. But here is something important. There was never one universally accepted explanation for the breakup. Different members have given different perspective over the years.
Ilifika muda basi kila mtu akaseparate. Kila mtu akaenda kufanya harakati zake. Lakini tu kikubwa muda ulifika. Kila mtu akaenda kufanya harakati zake.
Some reports focused on disagreement with management, others focused on the members' desire to pursue solo careers. Mbosso said he shed tears when Yamoto Band broke up, but he also insisted that the 4 members remained friends, and that the split was not simply about hatred or personal conflict.
Yamoto Band ilivunjika, lazima kwanza nianzie huko. Ilivunjika kwa sababu kila mtu alikuwa anaonyesha anatamani kufanya kazi.
And that is what makes the Yamoto story so heartbreaking. Sometimes people don't separate because they hate each other. Sometimes they separate because their dreams stop fitting inside the same room. And then came the real test. Could these 4 artists succeed without Yamoto? For some, the answer was yes. For others, the journey became much harder. Aslay had already established himself as one of the group's most recognizable voices. After Yamoto, he pursued a solo career and released songs that kept his name alive in the Tanzanian music scene. But his post-Yamoto journey was not as smooth as many expected. Over the years, questions were raised about the decline in his career, and Aslay himself later pushed back against claims that personal habits were responsible for his struggles.
Ukisikia comment inasema kwamba Aslay sasa hivi muziki umemwisha au umeshamshinda tena, hataweza kurudi kwenye ile peak. Unaichukuliaje?
Kwanza mimi na appreciate sana mashabiki wanaoandika vitu kama hivyo. So kila anaye comment ni shabiki yako. Anayekupenda zaidi na anayejua kitu unachokifanya hawezi kucomment kitu kibaya kwenye account yako.
The boy who once looked destined for unstoppable dominance was now fighting to maintain his position alone. Then there was Enock. His voice had been one of Yamoto's greatest weapons, but after the group ended, the transition to being a solo artist proved difficult. He later spoke about how difficult it was to escape the mentality of being part of a group. Think about that. For years, you have 4 people besides you, 4 voices, 4 performers, 4 people sharing the pressure. Then suddenly, the microphone is yours alone, and there is nowhere to hide. Beka Flavour also pursued his own path. He continued releasing music and remained part of the Tanzanian entertainment scene. But just like Enock, the enormous success that Yamoto had achieved as a collective proved difficult to reproduce individually. The group had been bigger than any one member, and that is one of the cruelest realities of music groups. Sometimes, the group becomes the star. And then, there was Mbosso, the man who once performed as Maromboso. After Yamoto, his career took a dramatic turn. In 2018, Mbosso signed with WCB Wasafi, the record label associated with Diamond Platnumz, and suddenly, the former Yamoto member who had once been 1/4 of the group was becoming a major solo star. His songwriting, his emotional vocals, his distinctive style, his collaborations, everything began to come together. Songs such as Odari and other releases helped to establish Mbosso as a major solo force. Recent coverage from The Citizen describes Mbosso as one of East Africa's most streamed artists, with millions of streams across platforms including Spotify, Apple Music, Boomplay, and YouTube. Think about the irony. Yamoto once had 4 stars, but when the group disappeared, one of those stars became even brighter. This is where we have to be careful, because calling Yamoto Band a failure would be completely wrong. They achieved something many artists spent their entire careers chasing. They became famous, they produced hit records, they won major recognition, they toured, they influenced the Bongo Flava scene, and they gave birth to 4 individual careers. The real tragedy wasn't that Yamoto failed. The tragedy was that Yamoto ended just when people believed they were getting started. Their success created expectations, their ambitions created separation, and the music industry moved forward without them. There is a powerful lesson hidden inside this story. Yamoto teaches us that talent alone cannot hold a group together. You need trust, you need management, you need communication, and most importantly, you need a shared vision. Because 4 talented people can build something extraordinary, But if their individual ambitions begin pulling in 4 different directions, even the strongest group can break. And perhaps the saddest part, years after the breakup, the former members have continued to speak about one another. In 2025, Aslay and Mbosso publicly showed that the old relationship was not necessarily destroyed forever, with both describing each other as brothers and acknowledging that the past had been left behind. So maybe Yamoto did not really die. Maybe Yamoto simply became 4 different stories. From 4 young musicians under Mkubwa Fella to one of Tanzania's biggest bands, from Nitakupolepweta to Mahaba Niue and Cheza Kwa Madoido, from awards and sold out performances to disagreements, solo ambitions, and separation, and then 4 different destinies. Aslay continued his journey, Enock continued fighting for his place, Beka Flavour continued making music, and Mbosso became Mbosso. The former Maromboso went from being one part of Yamoto to becoming a major solo artist in his own right. But perhaps the biggest question isn't, why did Yamoto Band break up? The bigger question is, what could Yamoto have become if they had stayed together? Because for a few magical years, Tanzania had 4 young stars moving in the same direction. And then, they looked at 4 different skis. That was Yamoto Band. They rose together, they fell apart, but their music refused to disappear.